This show is part of the RetroZap.com podcast network.
Now, prepare yourselves for a Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels special edition. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, Scoundrels, and welcome to episode 66.2, a Scoundrels Special Edition. I'm Dennis, and tonight I am joined by fellow RetroZapper Kendall Schroeder. Kendall, welcome to Starship, Sabers, and Scoundrels. How are you doing?
Oh, thank you, Dennis. I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
Excellent. On this Scoundrels Special Edition, Kendall and I are going to discuss the latest episode of Resistance, The Children from Tehar. Scoundrels, this is a full spoiler discussion, so if you haven't seen this episode yet, hit pause, go watch it, and we'll talk to you in about 22 minutes. If you're still here, you have either seen the episode or you don't care about being spoiled. So with that out of the way, Kendall, you and I haven't really had a chance to talk about Resistance yet. We've got our Discord server where people have kind of mentioned it and coming and going and passing. But overall, what's kind of been your impression of Resistance? Are you enjoying it?
Oh, I'm loving it. I look forward to every Sunday when it comes out, and I can't get enough of it. Really, I didn't think I was going to feel that way at first, but as some of you may have seen on some of my Inktober drawings, as Resistance came on, some of my drawings started to take the shape of some of the Resistance characters. So I really am enjoying it and looking forward to this, see where this really goes.
So compared to Rebels and the Clone Wars, how does it rank for you?
Well, obviously that's hard to compare those shows. Clone Wars was a big deal in my life. I loved that as I continued to watch that, and then Rebels came on and really blew my mind. This is different. Obviously, the art style is certainly different. The storytelling is certainly different. I know people say that this is more geared toward kids, but I think all Star Wars is geared toward kids. I was a kid when I first came to Star Wars, so I don't take that as a big deal. But I really am enjoying it more and more. I like the action, and I like I think the story's going to give us something that we've never seen before, so that's good. We don't have the Force yet, which is interesting. I don't know how I feel about that, because I'm a big Luke Skywalker and Force person. So not having that in Resistance is interesting. So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, we definitely got a hint about that possibly coming up in this episode as well. It's been interesting. I've kind of noticed that since the premiere up to this episode that we're talking, I'm not sure the mature is the right word, but I've kind of felt like the maturity of the show has gone up a bit. I kind of felt like those first couple episodes, they did gear more towards a younger sensibility, but the plot has gotten a little bit more, I don't want to say in depth, but a little bit more interesting and a little bit less reliant on some of the slapstick type humor as we've gone along so far in the show. Do you agree with that statement, or?
Yeah, I do agree with that. And I think this episode certainly was heavier, a little bit more weighty than some of the others. So I totally agree.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into the Children from Tehar, which I think, depending on how you count, is episode 5 or 6. It just depends on the cable provider. But at any rate, the episode begins with Kaz entering Yeager's garage, and he notices Tam and Neeku are doing some repairs on the Fireball. He offers to help, but Tam initially turns him down because, let's face it, his track record with repairs hasn't been spectacular. Eventually, they need a third hand, so Tam reluctantly agrees to let him join the repair. However, things quickly go awry, and Kaz tightens a bolt the wrong way, which wrecks the compensator that they were trying to install. I don't know, Kendall. To me, this is kind of maybe Tam should have seen this coming and provided a little bit more instruction.
I think you've said this before. The whole episode starts with Kaz messing something up mechanically. So here we are again with that same type of thing. Yeah, you would think Tam would have learned.
Right. Yeah, I kind of surprises me that Tam or Jaeger or someone hasn't, or Neeku for that matter, hasn't really pulled him aside and kind of given him lessons on how to be a mechanic. There's this kind of almost a brother-sister type rivalry between him and Tam, I think, going on in the garage. But they're part of the same team. And, they work on jobs together, and they're getting paid is dependent upon them getting a job done. And yet no one we always just see Kaz floundering around kind of in the garage. It's kind of been one of my criticisms of the show, is that he's got two jobs right now. He's a spy, and then his cover is as a mechanic, but no one's ever really taught him how to do either thing.
Exactly. Yeah, that would be a really cool little bit to put in an episode, and it wouldn't take that long either to have Neeku just showing Kaz a little bit how to be a mechanic. I think that'd be a cute little, a little relationship that we could see play out. That wouldn't take very long to do.
Mm-hmm. So Kaz vows that he's going to get a new one of these compressors for Tam, but they cost, I think they said like 20,000 credits, which he doesn't have. He barely has a credit to his name. So they head over to Aunt Z's cantina. He plunks down the only money he has, and then return eats a couple sips of water before Neeku graciously steps in and buys him his hydration, which is funny the way Neeku put that. While they're there, he kind of overhears a Godel and a rather large Rhodian talking about a bounty on a couple of children, which happens to be 20,000. So, awfully convenient. That's exactly how much he needs to buy this compensator. So he's going to he's going to keep his eyes open and search the station, hoping to find these kids so he can get the compensator. I don't know. I get it. It's a 22-minute show. But again, it seemed a little convenient that all these things fell into place so quickly. He needs $20,000. A bounty comes up for 20,000, or credits, I should say. Bounty comes up for 20,000 credits, and the kids happen to be on the station. So, it's like I said, convenient. I don't know. Did that bother you at all?
Well, I thought about that too. It certainly was convenient, but you're right. It is a short show, and you've got to get to the action. I mean, you could think of it same thing for the old Murder She Wrote shows. That every time Jessica Fletcher showed up, there was going to be somebody dying, and so I guess it's convenient in that way too to tell a story.
Mm-hmm. Right. So Kaz and Neeku, they set out, and it doesn't take them long. They find these kids. They've stolen. I don't know if you've gone into the episode guide on StarWars.com, but they kind of have that blog post about 10 things that you may not have noticed on the show, and then they have Bucket's List, the droid, who we need to see more of, by the way. But one of the things that they mentioned is that that blue-looking bacon that the kids steal from the vendor was actually puffer pig bacon. The puffer pig was the critter that was made famous during Rebels. I was a little surprised they went there with that. That was kind of one of the cute moments from Rebels, and now we have one of these critters getting slaughtered for bacon
by an Ugnaught of all people.
Yeah, good point. I don't know. I'm not sure if I was an Ugnaught, I'd be comfortable with that. But anyway, so they run into the kids, and Kaz doesn't get what this bounty is. He's viewing it much more of as a reward for the safe return of these kids, and he's trying to convince them that he wants to help. He wants to help them get home. Obviously, he doesn't know what's going on with these kids. They don't buy it, and so they run off. Just as they're, oh, okay. I know. I'm sorry. I drew a blank here for a second. But one of it's a brother and a sister, and the boy drops some sort of a emblem off of his sleeve that's got a symbol on it, and it intrigues Kaz, so he picks it up, and he gets summoned to a meeting with. Well, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. Neeku takes him down to the engineering level of Colossus Station to meet with the Childae, which are a turtle-like species, and they are the engineers of Colossus Station. So, a new species, at least I don't recall seeing them anywhere before. What did you think of the Childae?
I think I fainted when I saw them. I got giddy when I saw this. It was incredible. No, we haven't seen anything like this before. We've never seen a turtle type of a character, as far as I know, ever before. And the Childae just got me so excited. I really and I actually had to had to draw one because I just got so excited about it because it was just a very interesting character. And what even made it more interesting, and I was at the end of when I was looking at the credits at the end, the voice of the Chilidae was by none other than Frank Welker. And
oh wow! I didn't even notice they talked enough to get a voice.
Well, I know they made enough noises, like I guess a Scooby-Doo type of a noise, I suppose, to have Frank Welker do that. To bring Frank Welker in to do a Star Wars character like this I thought that blew me away too. So that was pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm. So they've had this meeting with the Chilidae, and there's an important bit there where Kaz turns around and freaks out because he thinks one of them is dead, and Neeku points out, no, he's just dormant. They can slow their vital signs down enough that they go into this deep hibernation type trait. And again, this will be important later. Kaz has been summoned for a meeting with Captain Doza at the end of the previous episode when Kaz had been chased out of the high tower. And he was on that ledge. There was some video taken of Kaz, and at the end of that episode, Doza's pulls up a video still and says, "Who are you?" Well, he kind of tracks Kaz down off camera and summons him for this meeting. And so Kaz and Doza are talking, and Kaz turns over that emblem that he found, and Doza asks Kaz if he has any idea what this money is for. So what is your impression here? Is Kaz just naive, or is this just inexperience? Is it both? Because a bounty is not the same thing as a reward for returning someone who's lost. And I don't know. There's kind of a device I think that kind of happens with the show. It's kind of a trope called the idiot ball. You just don't ask that one other question you need to know to avoid misunderstandings and of complications. And it seems like Kaz makes this mistake quite a bit. What's your take on that?
No, I agree with you 100%. I think he is naive. I think he acts on his heart. I think he really is. He's and Jaeger said this in a couple episodes ago, or even the last episode, that he really is a good person at heart. And I think he leads with that. He doesn't think before he acts. And so, I don't think he even really put all that together. And he just said, wow, okay, I need money. I can help these kids too. What a great thing to do. So I don't think he really thought that deeply into it.
Yeah, he rushes into things, and he doesn't. The way he did, the way he started spying when he first got to Colossus Station, just ran out onto the streets and started tiptoeing down the street in broad daylight, trying to overhear what people are saying, as opposed to giving some thought as to what he was doing. And he has these flashes of thoughts and I can accomplish this, my goal, kind of what you were just saying here, by doing whatever. And then sometimes it works out and sometimes it's clever, but he doesn't always think his plans through, and I think it, and we've seen it creates other problems. But before long, Neeku hears from the Chilidae that they found the kids, and so they go to meet with them on the engineering level, and they learn that the kids' name are Kel and Isla. And they tell their story that they fled from Kylo Ren, of all people, and Kaz puts two and two together and figures out that it was the First Order that attacked their village on Tehar, and so now they're refugees trying to get away from the First Order, and that is why the First Order, I guess it's no witnesses. The First Order's put this bounty on these kids because they don't want them telling their story to anybody. So you were just talking about this, that we haven't had the introduction of the Force yet, but we have a very strong mention of a Force user here with Kylo Ren. So what'd you think?
Oh, my hair stood on end when I heard that name. I'd never, you hear about, where this is set in the timeline, and you think, well, could we see, or could we hear of Snoke, or could we hear of Kylo Ren? And sure enough, here it is, and I still wasn't expecting it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was not expecting this either. I mean, they build Gwendolyn Christie's role as Captain Phasma in this series, and of course now she's been in what, 3 episodes?
At least 3, yeah.
Yeah, and so she's, they've not been necessarily been huge parts. She had a conversation with Captain Doza just prior to this that was fairly lengthy, and when that conversation started, she, when Doza called her, she said, "Oh, have you reconsidered our offer to help out in the station? The First Order really wants to bring Colossus Station into the fold." And Doza responded, "No, but we kind of had this rocky relationship, so in the interest of improving things, I wanted to give you some information. That bounty you set, those kids have been found here." And but then Doza strongly discourages her from just sending the First Order in guns blazing. He does say that you're going to abide by my laws if you come here, and I guess that says something about his power. I've been intrigued by Doza, and when the First Order shows up, it's Commander Pyre. He's a stormtrooper wearing gold armor, and then 2 regular stormtroopers, and they've got their weapons set on stun, and so they're not just blasting everything like they did in the previous episode when they were trying to catch Kaz when they caught him eavesdropping on in the Hightower. So what do you have a take on what it is that the First Order really wants with Colossus Station?
I don't. It's really interesting. I mean, I know you've talked about this being like that hub, like a Deep Space Nine type of a place, and having, I suppose, the First Order could have control over this area. They could use that as, for whatever reason, to further their spread of control, maybe. But yeah, it's interesting because Phasma certainly does seem to respect Captain Doza. Yep. He seems to have some kind of weight of importance, which is interesting, and maybe we'll learn more about that in the coming episodes. But she seems to abide by his recommendations to have the troopers come there under his rule.
Yeah, it's one of these things that I've been giving a lot of thought to, because the First Order brought fuel to Colossus Station a couple episodes ago, and at the time I've been thinking, maybe they want it as a staging ground, but they're bringing their own supplies. We've seen Starkiller Base already, and they have their Star Destroyers, and so I don't know. I guess for some way it represents a foothold, but I just can't. I say this every time I talk about Resistance, but I can't help but get the feeling there's more to Colossus Station than we know right now, and that at some point in the future we're going to get some reveal about it. But and maybe it's just a plot device that it's useful to the First Order, and who knows? We may find out when this is all said and done that this leads right into the Force Awakens. That once they have the station, it gives them a place to launch their missions into Republic space. So we'll see.
Well, maybe Aunt Z's bar is the only place that sells good stuff, I guess. The jet juice.
Yeah, I hadn't considered that one. So, so the First Order is there with Commander Pyre, and of the 2 children, Isla had broken her leg. It had to be a minor break because she bore it very well and it didn't look all that bad. But Kaz, Neeku, and Kel and went to look for something to help fix the leg, and they find some sort of a grain or herb or something that was going to help with this. They use it as a compress or something, but they get discovered by the First Order while they're doing it. They flee back to the engineering section, and kind of wrapping up some things here pretty quickly, they essentially fake the deaths of the kids. They opened up a trap door to the ocean, and then a couple of the Childe, they fall through and they slow their vital signs. So when the First Order scans, they basically see these weakening signs under the water and assume it's the kids dying, which was kind of gruesome for a kid's show. But and then of course the kids, Kaz and Neeku, and they're just kind of hiding off to the side of this platform. And so the First Order buys it and they leave. I have to say that I was not thinking that that's what the plan. Obviously I knew they were going to try some sort of a trick, but when they opened that trap door, I didn't even think at the time when I first watched this that one of the Childe was going to pull that trick where they could slow their vital signs and drop into the water. And even when they said that weakening vital signs, I still didn't put 2 and 2 together until after they I don't know. it was kind of one of those moments where I was slapping my head and going, "Oh, well, duh,"
Right.
Because I feel like I should have put that one together. How about you?
Yeah, it was a great callback to that short little line that Neeku said about them slowing their life systems, and it was really a neat little callback to that story. So that threaded through that whole scenario. So I liked it, but yeah, I didn't see that coming either.
Yeah. So Pyre reports back to Captain Phasma. She's pleased with the outcome of this mission, which really leads me to believe it was let's keep this quiet. Their activities in the unknown regions or wild space or wherever it is exactly that they are, and they don't want word getting out that they're growing in power, which makes sense. But I guess they're taking no chances, and this kind of seems like the thing that Phasma would do if you've read the novel that Delia Dawson wrote, or the comic series that was written about Phasma and how she leaves no stone unturned when they're trying to cover their tracks. So I thought that was great, keeping with the character. But then Kaz goes to report to Poe Dameron, and when he calms Poe, he's not there. Instead, he gets Eloasti. Now, that was a surprise to me. I thought that was kind of a cool cut, that they're bringing in this character who was, I think, probably more famous for his name than anything. I mean, I don't even remember if he even got a line in The Force Awakens.
Maybe I'm hit. Maybe that was the only line he had.
Yeah, okay, that's right. I couldn't remember if that was him or if that was Abinetto. Is that what his species called?
Maybe, yeah.
But
I'm not sure it was him.
Yeah, but so Elo, kind of takes his report, and Kaz mentions that there was someone named Kylo Ren, so Kaz doesn't know anything about Kylo Ren. It was him putting two and two together that it was the First Order that was involved, and that's what got him to report. But Eloasti, he says, well, there's someone named Kylo Ren involved, if that means anything to you. And I was like, yeah, that definitely means, you can say that. That means something to us. But then Elo goes on to say, you're that pilot that Poe recruited, and he's spoken very highly of you, and good work on the spine. So let's be blunt for a second. Is Kaz really worthy with that level of praise at this point?
Yeah, I had a hard time with that one too. I think, I kind of look at it and think that maybe Ella was just trying to just encourage him, to keep him, doing a good job. And well, he did bring this information, which was obviously of interest and of importance. So I think, obviously he appreciated him for that. And so I think, thinking of the way they interacted, it was like Ella was just saying, hey, you're doing great work. Poe may not have ever said that,
right.
But Ella was going to at least acknowledge the work that he did. He at least giving him that information, I think.
Yeah, one of the things I've been pleased with this series is, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, was that Kaz's evolution as a spy, as a resistance operative. I mean, he went from having no idea what he was doing in those first couple episodes to he's getting it right. He understands that it's not so much about going out and rooting out the information, eavesdropping everywhere you can. It is paying attention to his surroundings, being there on the station and observing what's happening, and when he catches wind of something, following up on it and investigating it, maintaining his cover, and then reporting things back that have importance. Obviously, the First Order showed up, so that was something that needed to be reported. But then collecting those details and passing them up the chain. I think that's been very well done, and I was really concerned when this series started that Kaz's activities as a spy were going to be that slapstick of him, just trying to be inconspicuous, following people down the street, listening in their conversations, as opposed to paying attention to what's going on around him, figuring out what happens on Colossus Station, and then looking for things that are out of place. So they've done well with that.
Well, he even says, Elo talks to him about that there are other agents out in the field, other spies, and Kaz has that realization and says, well, there are other agents and spies besides me. So again, I think, he goes head first into some of these things, or heart first into some of these things, and doesn't really think about it. And sometimes I think he thinks that he's the only spy, and he was called on by Poe Dameron to do this great work. And I think he's working into that a little bit to understand really his role. And I think you're right about that. And we're seeing that development.
One of the things I want to go back to, because we kind of brushed right over it, but what do you think of Captain Doza? He's kind of a complicated character. He's not necessarily giving into the First Order, but he seems to be willing to work with them when the conditions are right. So what is your take on him?
Yeah, it seems like he's using them in a way, for what he wants, and I'm not sure yet. That last little scene that they show of him in this episode, he's looking at that insignia, and then has a concerned look on his face. So I'm wondering if either that insignia is going to come up to play some importance later on, or if he's thinking about something else. If he really wants to bring in the First Order, and if he wants to be a part of that, or if he's still got a different agenda. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I appreciate his position. I think you get the impression that his fortune is the Colossus station. It's not that he's got a whole bunch of resources necessarily elsewhere in the galaxy. And so, and then he does take seriously this responsibility he has to the citizens that make Colossus Station home. And then there is, he is kind of on the frontier. So the First Order is something he has to take into account. He doesn't seem to get a whole lot of backup from the Republic. The Resistance is kind of something that's the existence of which is not really widely known throughout the galaxy. So I can kind of see him having to try and balance a lot of interests to do the best that he can with the station and his position. Something else I want to talk about was these kids. We talked about the First Order's motivation may have been that they came and attacked Tehar for whatever reason. Pulling the planet into the fold. We don't know if they're like the Empire and they're ravaging the planet for its resources to build Starkiller Base or anything or their fleet or anything like that. But First Order was keen to get these children, and they were happy when they heard that they perished in the water. But if you noticed, these kids had yellow eyes, and so they're a little bit different. And do you get the feeling that perhaps there might be more to these kids than we were led to believe? That it's just a simple, they got away somehow. They got away from the First Order. Is there something? Do you have any hint that maybe there's some sort of there's something different about them that may be important later?
Yeah, I thought that too. They're to wipe out a whole planet or Tehar, the whole homeworld, for just wiping it out. There's got to be something to do with that, and maybe it is. Maybe Kylo Ren was looking for these two kids, and they got away, and he wiped out the whole village, and now they're on the hunt for them. But to have Captain Phasma be okay with them being eliminated, maybe they're not as important as I think they might be. I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, I was wondering if perhaps it wasn't so much that maybe there was a bunch of kids in that village, and these two happened to get away, and if they couldn't get them back, getting them eliminated, eliminates the trail back to the village or the First Order and everything that was happening. So again, I don't know. I'm just wondering. This happened a lot in the last couple seasons of Rebels. There was things that seemed inconsequential and almost filler type stories at the time, only to come back and have a huge impact later in the show. And so I don't know if they have that long-term thinking going on with these kids, or if it's just supposed to be a demonstration of the cruelty of the First Order and the lengths that they're willing to go to keep their identity a secret and carry out their plans. But one other thing I wanted to touch on, and before we wrap up our conversation on this episode, Kaz has gone to great lengths to conceal his identity as a Resistance operative. I'm getting resistant just flat out calling him a spy because we've been over those grounds. But and multiple times he's gone out of his way to conceal from Tam what he's doing there on Colossus Station. In the past episode, when the Aces are finishing up escorting in the First Order freighter, Tam catches him out there kind of on the balcony overlooking things, and she's like, "Oh, the aces, you're out there studying them, trying to get a leg up on me." And he's like, "Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what I'm doing." Mm-hmm. Now, they don't exactly have the friendliest of relationship now, but I kind of, it seems to me that they're co-workers, they live in the same place. There's been stories several times over this episode where they've interacted with each other directly. I kind of get this brother or sister vibe type thing developing here. So this is all very long winding up to this question. Do you think all this deception that Kaz is employing to maintain his cover is going to come back to hurt his relationship with Tam and Neeku and some of the others here on the station?
Yeah, I certainly think that could happen. And I was wondering, Neeku doesn't even know he's a spy either. It's just Jaeger is the only one that knows, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think certainly there's going to be, that's a typical trope, right? Where he hides some part of himself to people, and then he becomes friends with those people and creates a close bond, and then they find out he's somebody that they didn't realize he was, and so that could come back to pose an issue. But I do agree with you that I think it's a brotherly, sisterly type of relationship that's going back and forth with those two, because we saw in the last episode, I think it was, with Tam and Phazon, they have some history there, which is interesting, that I'd like to see explore a little bit more in the coming episodes too. So, but you're right. I think there's going to be some problems when it comes time for people to find out who Kaz really is.
Yeah, because Tam already thinks Kaz is full of it.
Yes.
Yeah. She doesn't believe for a second that he's had any training as a mechanic anywhere. Every time he's demonstrated his abilities or lack thereof as a mechanic, things have gone poorly. And so she's already kind of suspicious of him. And it's like, why does Jaeger have this guy in the garage? Obviously Kaz has been in the one race, and he did very well right up until the end when the fireball fell apart on him. But I know she kind of suspects something, but this just seems to me that we're heading to a point where, just at the point where she accepts them and really starts to trust them, then we're going to get this reveal, and it's going to be an issue. So,
yeah, well, he's going to be racing sometime soon, because it looks like he's going to become, I guess, one of the aces eventually. But how he gets there and when does he get there is going to be the interesting piece to see.
And that's a good point, because Tam wants to be one of the aces. Yeah. And so they're competing for time in the fireball. Once they get repairs on the fireball, so they can get it fixed, and one of them can try and become an ace. So, oh wow! I mean, there is a lot of potential issues coming up between them in the future here. But all right, well, let's go ahead and give our final thoughts and our grades on this episode. You're our guest, so you have the floor.
Well, I've enjoyed every episode so far, but I think this one carried just a little bit more weight than the others. It brought in some new characters that I love the background characters so much that we see in these episodes, and then bringing the Cheladay in, that just blew my mind. So I'm going to give this a solid A.
Okay. I've enjoyed the progression of this show. The first episodes were C episodes to me. I gave the last episode a solid B. I think I'm going to give this one a B+. It hasn't completely blown me away yet. The series has not, but even in this first season, it's made steady improvement with each episode, and I feel like I don't know if it just took a couple episodes for them to kind of get their character development under control and kind of pull back on the reins a little bit with some of the slapstick humor that they were employing. Sure. But even with a few convenient plot contrivances in this episode, I still feel like it was a better story from start to finish than some of the episodes we've had so far. So again, I'm going to give it a B+. But before we go, Kendall, you've alluded to your art a couple times, and you are one of the artists on staff over at RetroZap. I've enjoyed recently your contributions to Inktober, but tell us a little bit about your history as an artist, especially when it comes to Star Wars.
Well, my history with Star Wars dates back to way back in '77, and I think the art came right along with it. I started. I was a big comic reader back in the late, early 70s and mid to late 70s, and even into some of the 80s. But and I think that's where I really started to love art. And I certainly was reading the Star Wars comics back in the day too, and in superhero comics as well. But then I went to all the way through school. I drew. I always drawing in the margin. I always get in trouble for doing that. And then finally went to college to become an art teacher. And I did get my teaching degree and taught art for a little while, and then taught second graders and did a lot of art during that time too. But I always really wanted to be an artist. I always wanted to write and illustrate my own books, especially when I became a teacher. I wanted to write and illustrate my own children's books, and I still do. Haven't done that yet. But art is not my major profession or my main profession, but it's something that I enjoy doing tremendously. And when I can just share my fandom with people through my art by doing that fan type of art, I really enjoy that. I love sharing that type of thing, and like I said, when I was looking at those Chelidate in this episode, I just had to draw them because it was just a cool design. So it's an expression of my love for Star Wars. And I would love to. I do other things too, other art pieces too. I've done commissions. I've done other drawing and painting, but I really enjoy doing Star Wars stuff. So if anybody out there in Star Wars land is listening, I'd love to do some sanctioned art from Star Wars someday. That'd be fun to do. But I'll keep doing what I'm doing here. And in the last 2 years, I've focused on the Inktober challenge, which is basically drawing a ink drawing every day for the entire month of October. Started several years ago by Jake Parker, and I've focused on mainly Star Wars for the last 2 years, and this year was no different. So every day of the month, I drew some character or depiction from Star Wars, and a lot of the Resistance characters found their way into my drawing this year.
Yeah, it's funny because before I really became aware of what Inktober was, I thought it was a Star Wars event, mainly because I've been just following you and your art when you had sketched that. Do you have a favorite Star Wars character that you like to sketch?
Oh, I love Yoda, and really the gonk droids. I love the gonk droids. Any kind of droid or weird oddball character, the wild and the wacky and the weird are fun to do. But I've been known to do a lot of gonk droids. Those characters don't have a lot of facial expressions, but they sure can. If you put them in the right situation, they sure can create a lot of emotion, and I get a kick out of that.
Mm-hmm. Is there a character that you find particularly difficult to draw?
People are harder to draw, I think, for me, than droids or even characters or creatures. It's trying to get the human likeness or the depiction of that character. That's a little bit harder. I'm still trying to develop a style where I could, draw Luke Skywalker in a way that I would draw him instead of just trying to make it perfect. And I struggle with that a little bit sometimes, and that makes it more difficult for me.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any projects you're working on right now?
Well, right now, yeah, I am doing an article for RetroZap that's going to be coming out soon about my Inktober challenge, and you'll see that coming very, very soon. But other than that, I'm trying to dig into something that some of those weird and wacky characters that haven't been seen very much lately, and see what I can do. Maybe I'd love to create like a little comic strip or a little like graphic novel of my own that would incorporate one of those characters. That's something that I've always been just dabbling with in the background, and I haven't put anything officially together yet. But that's certainly something that's really burning in my heart right now to see what I can do with.
I remember you did a lot of drawings, obviously with the release of Solo earlier this year. Did you have a particular favorite character from that?
Yeah, that was a 60-day challenge. So 60 days leading up to the movie, which I enjoyed and loved it tremendously. I really enjoyed drawing Chewie. I've had fun time drawing Chewbacca and some of those characters, especially with the goggles. But then there was a lot of droids in that movie. There were so many droids in that movie. So drawing a lot of the Gonk droids in Solo that you see there. So I think I enjoyed that more so than anything else, is drawing some of those droids.
All right. Well, again, Kendall, I appreciate you joining me this evening for our discussion of Resistance, and it was fun talking about your art a little bit. Before we go, where can everyone find you in your social media presences?
Yeah, well, I'm Run Kendall Run, pretty much everywhere, on Twitter and on Instagram. You can find me on Tumblr too, sometimes too, but that's where you'll find me most of all. And then you can find some of my work on retrozap.com, obviously, and look for my new article coming out really soon. And so yeah, that's where you'll find me.
Okay. Well, that's going to do it for our Resistance discussion this evening. Before you go, if you want to find more content from the usual Scoundrels, you can find Darth Taxis on The Geek Supreme each week with Scott Murray, Jeff McGee, and Regina Davis with their Around the Horn style geek topic discussion show. You can always find Jay's blog and fashion reviews over on Coffee with Kenobi. As for me, you can find my comic reviews on retrozap.com, and each month I'm talking Star Wars comics with Jovial J. Shepard on Jedi Journals. This last month we covered the third volume of Darth Vader, which is the Burning Sea story arc. It's the subjugation of Mon Cala. If you haven't read that, I highly recommend it. Go check that one out. If you want to find us on social media, we are at SQPod on Twitter and Instagram, and on Facebook you can find us at facebook.com/SQPod. You can email us at sqpod@retrozap.com. You can follow Darth Taxis on Twitter at Darth Taxis, Jay is at Joyce Krebs, and I am at DJKVER2. Speaking of RetroZap, we are a proud part of the retrozap.com podcast network. The network currently features more than a dozen shows covering everything from retro gaming and movies to Animaniacs, collecting, Dune, Game of Thrones, and of course, a ton of Star Wars. You can subscribe to the network feed and you'll get them all in one place. That's going to do it for this Scoundrel Special Edition. We'll talk to you all soon with another edition of Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels. Until then, may the Force be with you.